Kia ora koutou, welcome to the Dunedin Stories political series. Very excited today. We have Andrew Sims running for Mayor under the Future Dunedin campaign. Declare my bias, obviously, right up front. Very excited to be running alongside of you, Andrew, and I'm really keen to share your story, the real Andrew Sims behind the campaign and before the brochures go out there today.
Thanks, Bex, and thank you very much for having me on. And I'm certainly equally excited to have you standing alongside me and the other future Dunedin candidates as well, standing alongside me in the local body elections 2025 for the Dunedin City Council. Very much looking forward to getting into the campaigning full on, and very much looking forward to explaining to the Dunedin community what we'll bring, what changes we think are needed, and I guess our vision for the future of Dunedin.
Yeah. So we will start at the beginning because I think that's really important.
Sure.
Shall we talk about your starting in life and how you became the very successful and respected person that's before me today?
Well, thank you for labelling me as that. I hope to earn that certainly from everybody else. Look, I grew up in Dunedin. My family moved to Dunedin when I was 4 years of age. We had a couple of years in a state house up in Stenhope Crescent in Corstorphine before my mum and dad bought a house over in Waverley. So very standard, I suppose, working class upbringing in Dunedin. Grant Sprays, Tahuna Intermediate, and then Bayfield High School, and on from there. So pretty standard upbringing in Dunedin. Was lucky, very lucky, I think, to have grown up in that time and to have met a lot of the people that I made friends with at Bayfield are still my friends today. And I think we had something pretty good going on there then, and that's survived the test of time.
And then what? We went to university. How did you possibly become the owner and founder of Andrew Sims Motors?
I guess the combination of hard work and luck, I think, and I do say that sincerely. I think there's always an element of being in the right place at the right time with these stories. But yeah, I left school and started work at Mosgiel Motors in Crawford Street, which some people will remember. And while I was there, I was studying part-time economics and marketing at Otago University, but also working as a yard groomer and a trainee salesperson, I guess, at Mosgiel Motors. At that time, I was taken in by the sales manager at the time, a man named Lex Gorry, who was a bit of an institution around Dunedin in that market. And he looked after me for probably 5 years and taught me a lot about backing yourself and having a go, working hard, having fun, and taught me a lot about communicating in a persuasive manner with the customers that would come in. But also he showed me, probably most importantly, the result you could get if you were successful and if you worked hard, that you could actually get a result. My parents, and I love my parents dearly, but they were the types that you never really spoke up, you kept your head down, you worked hard, you kept your head down, you didn't stick your head up above the parapet. Whereas Lex was a very different character. He was more than prepared to stick his head up above the parapet and to really have a go, and it taught me the value of that. So from there I moved to Christchurch and worked for some years for Archibald's in Christchurch, and I learned a lot there as well. Then the opportunity came at the age of 32 to buy into the Mitsubishi dealership in Christchurch. That business had gone broke 2 years earlier and had been in a bit of a holding pattern with Mitsubishi in the interim. And myself and a partner bought that business, and that was my first foray into dealership management. It was a pretty interesting time. I turned up there, and all of the management team were older than me, and some of them were twice my age. And so that taught me a lot about working with other people and building a team around me. And so from there, I mean, it's there's some bits in the middle there, but from that dealership ownership, ultimately then buying dealerships throughout New Zealand, I think the car companies, and particularly Mitsubishi, saw me as somebody that would take on the problem dealerships. So when so that they would see me as somebody that was in line for, if there was a basket case in the country, that they could, they could put us in there that we'd make something of it, and we successfully did that over, through a number of dealerships. I guess the biggest move came in 2005 when Mitsubishi approached me to buy their Auckland operation. So once again, it was an operation that Mitsubishi owned themselves. In 2005, the business the previous year had lost a couple of $1 million, had about 40 staff, and was turning over about 30 million a year, going nowhere. And my first response when they came to me was, this one might be, pretty difficult. It had probably been 10 years since that dealership had made any money. It was a flagship dealership for Mitsubishi, but it was expensive to operate in Auckland, in a difficult market and a highly competitive market. So I guess probably just youthful enthusiasm and naivety and stupidity possibly, but we decided to have a go at that, and we took that business over. Mm-hmm. So, fast forward 20 years, and that business now employs 340 people and has a turnover approaching 400 million. So we've grown the business. It's now a lot of franchises. It's now got a big footprint in Auckland. Pretty pleased with the way that played out. There was some sleepless nights and some long days and some difficult times where we were running on fumes. Yeah. But we were able to turn it around, and that's where we are today.
Mm. Well, I hope Mitsubishi said thank you.
And I've said thank you to them as well. I mean, they backed me. They made it possible for me to do what I've done, and yes, they did that because they could see the upside for them, I'm sure. But having said that, it's a partnership, and I've said thank you to them as well.
So there's lots in that, of course, but I think something that's really clear is some values that you've built along the way, having gone through those experiences. What are your core values, and how did you arrive at those, perhaps being your drivers?
I'd like to think I've worked hard. I'd like to think that, I've taken some risks when I was able to do that. It didn't feel like a risk at the time. I'd like to think that I've worked hard through that period of time. I've always remained in touch with Dunedin, so I bought Islington in 2003, bought that property and have lived there on and off through that period of time as well. So Dunedin's always been home for me. It's been the only place that I feel at home at. And you would always know on a Sunday night, if a Sunday night, wherever you were, if you felt lonely, then you knew you shouldn't be there and you should ultimately move home. So that's always been a core part of my roots in Dunedin, and the group of friends that I've got down here, who we've known each other since we were 10 years of age. So there's no hiding. There's no, they know exactly who you are. And so I'd like to think that, I think in terms of my politics are reasonably simple. I know that I can look after myself. So, I know that I can look after my family and myself come what may. But I think, I expect to pay tax, and I expect to pay my rates, and I expect the government or the council to use that money wisely to look after the people that are less fortunate than me. And when I see that not happening, that really concerns me greatly, because I think as a society we do have to have mechanisms that rebalance society to those people who are less fortunate, didn't perhaps have the education, didn't have the start in life that I had, to look after them and to make sure that they're cared for. And that's probably the biggest part for me that I see, is that if I see that money being wasted, or if I see that money being misappropriated or used for things that I don't believe it should be used, then I think I've got a role to play. So that's a big part of who I am.
Well, it's a beautiful segue into that next question, isn't it? How did you arrive at the decision to run for Mayor in 2025? It's a big decision. As you said, you've got the means to look after yourself and your family, come what may. So why?
It is a big decision, and it's a decision that I haven't taken lightly. So I guess if I wind it back to the lockdown of 2020, so I spent a bit of time during the lockdown of 2020 walking around the Taieri and thinking about what was going on and thinking about what we had, and also seeing the challenges in front of the community. and the issues that I felt weren't being dealt with effectively by the council. And that caused me to run for the Mosgiel Taieri Community Board in 2022. I put myself forward there, lucky enough to be elected and then appointed as chair of the community board, because I believed that I had the skills and the acumen, if you like, to make a difference to the whole community, not just for me and my family, but for the whole community, and that I did have a great deal to offer in that respect. And I saw decisions being made throughout Dunedin that I didn't agree with, and I saw decisions being made that were effectively going to mortgage the future of Dunedin by with the direction that things were going in, and I still see us going in that direction. But that, I decided at that point, I think in 2020, I decided that I wanted to be mayor of Dunedin, but the decision to run for the community board was a stepping stone towards that. I needed to get in front of council. I needed to work out how the processes were working, work out who was who.
So you're playing the long game, weren't you?
Well, probably not a long enough game for some people. So some people say, well, even now you're jumping the queue. But
absolutely.
Yeah, but I didn't feel like that. I felt like I could represent the people of Dunedin in a manner that I think most of them wanted to be represented. But also coming from somewhere where we're having a great deal of experience of building a team and getting people around me, like in business, and particularly in the business that I'm in, unless you can build a team of people around you, then you're going to get nowhere. You have to be able to bring people with you, and you have to be able to get the great majority of them to share the vision and to see what's possible and to see the benefit for themselves in seeing that vision, and then go along with you. And I've often said that, and I see this as no different, unless you can bring the whole community with you, then I don't think you're going to achieve a lot. I think you have to say, this is the vision. You may not all agree with it, but I think this is the best vision for the future of Dunedin, and bring everybody with you. And it's an old adage, but I think it's a fair adage for this situation, and that is that the art of getting a result and the art of managing people is getting people to do what you want them to do because they want to do it. And it's the last bit that's the most important bit, because then you have no resistance. Then it's easy.
Not just because they're told.
Not because they're told, but because they want to do it.
Yeah.
And I think I see that as very much a parallel with what we're trying to do here.
So what is the vision? Should we talk about that? What does a Dunedin look like under your leadership in, let's say, 9 years' time? That's giving you 3 terms as mayor. What does that actually look like? What can we imagine?
I think to answer that question effectively, the first thing we have to do is to go back to where the plan is currently taking us. And I don't want to be negative. I don't want to lay the blame at the feet of others. But if we look at our current 9-year plan for Dunedin, we're going to end up with $1 billion. That's $1,000 million worth of debt that's on the ratepayers' account. So I'm not talking about the debt that's held by the council-controlled entities, because in the main, that's good debt. So the debt that Aurora Energy has is good debt, because that debt is funding growth. So yes, it's carrying debt, but that debt is growing that business, and it's growing the value of that business, and one day that's going to pay massive dividends for Dunedin. What I'm talking about is the core council debt that the council holds, for which the ratepayers are responsible for. And at the end of this 9-year plan, we'll be north of $1,000 million. Now, at that point, and just to put that in perspective of every household in Dunedin, at that point, $1,000 of every rates bill will just be servicing debt. Within the council, most of your rates goes for core services. So the great majority of your rates is committed to drainage, libraries, parks, all the things that we want or need. It's only the small bit at the end that's the discretionary spend. So that's the theatres, the Dunedin Symphony Orchestra, the train, botanical gardens, these things. That's the discretionary bit at the end that the council spends a lot of time arguing about who's going to get that money. At the end of this 9-year plan, if it's unchecked, all of that discretionary money will just be funding interest. That's all it'll be. And that really bothers me, because what we're effectively doing there is shoving the cost of the decisions we're making today onto the next generation, onto our children, onto our grandchildren. We're saying, you can pay for this, we're going to do this, but you're going to pay for it. Because that's what debt is. It's shifting the expense down the line. And I'm incredibly worried about that, because our children and our grandchildren will have their own they'll have their own challenges to face. They don't need to be paying for ours and theirs, and it's just mounting up. And what I see is a council that is failing to grasp this and failing to make the really tough decisions required to actually turn that around and say, let's actually start paying down some debt, and let's actually have a genuine balanced budget that's not reliant on massive rates increase or massive increase in debt, but let's have a genuine balanced budget that meets our expenditure with our income, just like a household or any other organisation is required to do to survive. Now, within that, I think we have to look at where that money's being spent, and it's a combination of unnecessary capital expense, and I'd use Smooth Hill as a big example of that. There's $142 million of unnecessary capital expense that this council's decided to expend, believing it's the right thing to do. But it's also operating expense. Now, at the last council meeting, with some stealth attached to it, this council reaffirmed its right to borrow money for operating expenditure. And that is a really dangerous place to get to. Now, whether you run a church or a scout group or your own family, whatever you're running, the minute you start borrowing money to pay operating expenses, that's the start of a spiral that you can then never get out of. So from a household point of view, it's like borrowing money on the mortgage to buy your groceries. Now, you can do that for a very short period of time, and you might do it if you might lose your job and you might be required to do that, but you can see the end of it. Once you start doing it as a routine function, then you're in trouble. You're in big trouble, because you're pushing that cost onto the next generation, and that has to change. That absolutely has to change. So the converse to that is, if we can push the front of the ship around and actually go in a slightly different direction and start having a balanced budget and start repaying this debt, then in 9 years' time we could have a vibrant, growing, attractive city. We can have the festivals, we can have the light show at Matariki, we can do all of those things that we want to do without feeling guilty about it and without mortgaging the future to do it. But in order to do that, we have to run a balanced budget, and we have to match our expenditure to our income, and we just have to start making some tough decisions that are going to assure the future of Dunedin, because we can grow in Dunedin. We've got everything we need to grow in Dunedin. We've got, more than ever at the moment, it's got really expensive and really hard to live in Auckland. Central Otago is heading the same way, where it's becoming massively expensive to live there. We're still relatively affordable in Dunedin, but we've got a world-class university, we've got a brand new hospital coming, we've got a deep water port, we've got beautiful natural heritage and wildlife, we've got everything we need. We just need to put it together. We need to actually put it together with a sensible financial plan that's crafted so that in 9 years' time, that's where we end up. Like, we end up with a vibrant, growing, attractive city, not somewhere that's struggling to keep the lights on. And those are the choices. And at the moment, we're going there.
You've certainly answered a lot of the questions that were going to be put to you, all in that, Andrew, and that's because you're just so passionate about it. Naturally, you want to tell the story. You talked about what the key tasks are that you're going to need to muster the team to take control of if and when you become mayor. The challenges to the city, because, the economy, the feeling about rates, we know, because we've been out there hearing the community, that there is a lot of pain. I would like to just sort of clarify, what are the 3 things that you believe you will be able to achieve with the right team around you to right the ship as you talk about getting it going in the right direction? What are those 3 things that you need to do, and how quickly can we do it?
I think we can do it quickly.
Yeah.
So, it can often be daunting. You look under the rock and you look at the depth of the issues, and it can be very daunting. But my experience is if you can build a team and bring people with you, then you can turn it around on a 5-cent piece. But to do that, we've got to have the willingness to do that. We've got to have the right people in place to drive those decisions. And I really believe that the task, the people I've spoken to an awful lot of people. I mean, and from this point of view, I feel like I'm in profit mode here because, and when I say that, what I mean is I've met so many people, so many wonderful people, some of whom have become friends, but certainly many have become confidants and give me a lot of advice and really want to help. But they all want the same thing. It's whether you talk to people at the university, within business, within tourism, you meet up with a group of elderly people from South Dunedin, they all want the same thing. They want the future of Dunedin to be secured. So when you've got the community that are saying, this is where we want to go, you think, well, this can't be that hard. You've just got to lead it. You've just got to be led properly and bring the resources together and turn the thing around and get going there. So I don't believe the task is daunting at all because I know the number of people that I can get behind what we're trying to do here. Where I think the issue will be is the resistance from the establishment, if you like. And when I say the establishment, what I mean by that is the bureaucrats and the councillors who are absolutely determined to hold Dunedin back. And I don't say that unadvisedly. Whether they believe it or not, they are holding the city back. And they're entrenched in delivering what they believe the city want, but which the community is saying, no, we don't want this at all. This is what we want. I think straight away we can turn the financial position of this city around. Without overstating the position, this could be one of the wealthiest cities in the world because we've got everything we need for that to be the case. This could be one of the most vibrant and most successful small cities in the world. And I say that because we've got Aurora Energy, and that was a big part of my decision to finally run for mayor was the effort to retain Aurora within the hands of the Dunedin people. Aurora Energy is heading towards being a $2.5 billion company, delivering $100 million in dividends to the city every year.
So we were going to give it away.
And we were going to sell it off to an Australian pension fund and think that we'd done a good day's work. Now, at that point, it will absolutely go there because it's dealing in a growth industry for a commodity with the electrification of everything. It's dealing with a commodity that everybody wants more and more of. That's absolutely the right thing for us to do, to continue to invest in that company to reap the rewards, which are not very far down the track. So we should use that to make Dunedin into the place that we want it to be. But at the same time, we need to get rid of the wastage. We need to look at every single contract that the city's involved in. We need to look at every expense line. And we need to look at it through the view of, if we were buying this as a business that was losing money and we wanted to turn it around, what changes do we need to make to turn that around? And that's not about austerity.
No.
And I really want to speak to that, because when people push for things, what they really need to understand is that the cost of that will be borne by the people at the bottom end of our society. So the retired people who are on fixed incomes that are struggling to pay their rates. And, I've got constituents in Mosgiel who have got a fixed income of $25,000 a year and a $5,000 rates bill. Now, that's a big percentage of their outgoings. So when you push something forward that's going to add to that rates bill, that's the people that it's impacting. It doesn't make much difference to you and I. No. We just keep paying. But it's that people at the other end, that's where those costs go, and that's the impact that those costs have. So we very much need to understand that and work on the fact that we can't just keep adding to rates to do what we want to do. So we have to make sure there's no wastage, that we're getting value for money, that we're getting efficiency from everything that the council is doing. So that's the first thing. The second thing that I'm really passionate about is the defence of South Dunedin. So those good people out there and that community have languished for 10 years since the 2015 floods, and they've had reports and they've had graphs and they've had talk. And yet in 2017, Opus delivered a report to say this is what you need to do and this will fix it. You need to split your catchment in half and this is what you need to do and you'll fix it. Now, a lot of those recommendations are included in option 2 of the South Dunedin Futures program. But we've waited 8 years from that report to get back to that point where we're saying this is what we should do. And that's not fair. It's not fair to those people in that community. Dunedin cannot do without South Dunedin. It's a vital part of Dunedin. It's a really important part of our community. There's $7 billion worth of assets at risk there. We need to actually do the work we need to do to shore up South Dunedin so that we are around to deal with the issues that are coming in the future. So that needs to be done without delay.
Yeah, and with compassion and empathy for those people that live there.
I absolutely. I think the suggestions that we should just pick those people up and move them, that to me that's akin to I don't know, just the disregard for the way people feel about that. It might be a modest little cottage in Surrey Street or wherever you live in South Dunedin, but that's home, and often intergenerational home, and it's where they feel at home. And to actually dismiss that is really disrespectful to those people. And equally as disrespectful it is to be off spending money on other things when that hasn't been dealt with. I can't work that out.
I have no doubt that the community as a whole, not just those that live in South Dunedin, will agree with you. Andrew, I think what we could move on to is the topic of people. He tangata, he tangata, he tangata. It is all about the people and how you bring them together. And you've touched on leadership and ability to form teams around you. But let's talk about some of the ways that you would continue to engage with the community once you are mayor. There is a history in the last couple of terms maybe where people have said these things and then they've become quite invisible or absent. What's your normal mode? What do you want to do in that space?
I think probably to begin to answer that, I agree. It is all, particularly for council, it is all about the delivery for the people. So they pay their rates and they expect a range of services and products to be delivered by the council for the benefit of the community. Some that they'll participate in, some they won't, but they see the greater value for the community. And I think we've lost that to some degree. I think we're not bringing the people with us any longer. And that concerns me. It's always mystified me why the council doesn't speak with the community more than what it does. So I know we have consultation and we have the ability for people to speak to the council, but in between times, I've never understood why the council doesn't hold workshops and involve experts from within the community in those workshops. For instance, if you're making a decision about the future of Sammy's and the Fortune Theatre and all the other bits of property that the council own, why wouldn't you bring in people who are experienced developers, experienced landowners, and talk to them about how they see things? Is there a future in this? What could we do with this? What could be the future of this site? But we don't. We get reports and we read those reports and we may put some of it out for consultation, but we don't at the ground level speak to the experts. One of the areas that I'm most concerned about is the homeless people in Dunedin. And a lot of people seem to slip through the cracks because the people that are involved in trying to mitigate that problem don't talk to each other and we don't talk to them. So bring them together. If you're making decisions about, if you're talking about social housing and if you're talking about looking after those people who are at the bottom one or two rungs of our society. Bring in people from the agencies that are already dealing with these people and see what they need and see what we can do to actually have a coordinated plan for that. Don't sit in your silo and think that you're making the right decision, but bring these people into these workshops. They don't need to have a vote. I'm not suggesting that you've got unelected people having a vote, but get their knowledge from them, because in talking to them, they're more than willing to give it. And they're more than willing to give it for the good of Dunedin, not because they think there's something in it for them, but for the good of Dunedin. Overwhelmingly, yes, there'll be one or two people that see an angle for themselves, but most people just want to see a better Dunedin. Bring them in and talk to them. Get engaged. Get engaged with these parts of the community a lot more than what we are doing.
Yeah, and you're speaking from very recent relevant experience, aren't you? You have already been out there making connections and talking about the challenges that we're seeing and how other people can support you to resolve that. Obviously, the Smooth Hill, South Dunedin, Aurora. So the community can trust that that is the type of person you are.
I certainly hope so, and absolutely. Like none of those things involve any gain for me, or I just look at it and think we're making the wrong decision here, and I've got to put my skills into having some influence on that. It would have been a colossal mistake to sell Aurora at the time, just the absolute wrong time to sell that company. And I think we're on the brink of making a similar size decision with Smooth Hill. When I look at the financial position that this city is in, the last thing you do is be borrowing money
to build a dump
that you don't need when you've got your neighbour saying you can use mine. And that just makes no sense to me and shouldn't really make a lot of sense to a lot of people. But to get back to your original question, I think the community's got to be empowered to solve a lot more of its own problems as well. And that's where I see a role for council that we're not really effectively using at the moment, that there are many, many problems within the community, and homelessness is one of them, where there's a role for the council to play, there's a role for the government agencies to play, there's a role for the social support providers to play. Somebody just needs to bring it together, and I believe the community can solve that problem. And if I can labour that point, I've only got one goal for unsheltered homelessness in Dunedin, and that is zero. There is if there's anybody living in a tent on the Oval, then that is unacceptable. Just one person living in a tent on the Oval is unacceptable. There is no excuse for it. There are plenty of things that we could be doing that won't cost ratepayers a lot of money, if any money, that could be making the plight of those people a lot better than what it is. And I reject the people that have said to me, I reject the sitting councillors that said to me, you're wasting your time, Andrew, that will always be a problem, you're barking at the moon, it can't be fixed, you can't help these people. Bollocks. There's absolutely a lot more that we can be doing to help those people. So again, it's not just a matter of dipping into the ratepayers' funds to try and fix a problem. It's using the platform that the council has to bring people together to solve your own problems. And I absolutely passionately believe that we can do that. And if I can take the example of the Dunedin Night Shelter. Now, as some people will know, the Dunedin Night Shelter, after the Alpers fire in Wellington, they were restricted to only being able to cater for 6 people, down from the 12, which was about right for what they needed, for what they were providing. Now, we took that on as a project. I got in touch with David Grant from Stewart Construction. We put some money in. He leveraged all of his contacts to get products and services and sub-trades donated or done at cost. And we were able to put that rebuild of the Dunedin Night Shelter ahead by 5 years by just simply harnessing the power of the community. Yes, we put some money in, but then we used that money. We turned a $600,000 problem into a $200,000 problem by harnessing the power of the community to rebuild that night shelter. And it's open, it's back to full capacity, away we go. Didn't involve any ratepayers' money, didn't involve any taxpayers' money. We harnessed the power of the community to fix that problem. And we need to do a lot more of that, because I was astounded during that process to see how much heartfelt, genuine warmth there was towards that cohort of people, the homeless people. that I had expected a lot more pushback than what we got, when in fact we got overwhelmed and we were turning people away that wanted to help because we'd already covered that part of it. So it was really good to see, and I think we need to do a lot more of that.
I'm a little bit concerned that this chat is going to confuse people even more, because the way you speak, there's no box to put you in, Andrew. So, there is a little bit of questions out there, what's Andrew's politics? What's his agenda? Where's the gotcha? What's he doing this for? What would you say to those people that are asking that?
I can understand that. and it's something that I contend with a lot in my life, that people, think, oh, you've done all right, so you must be into this, in this box. That's we want to put you in that box. Whereas, look, I think the points I'd like to make in answer to that question is that I can approach this from the point of view I don't have anything to lose. So I can approach this to say, I believe Dunedin can have a much better future, and this is the effort that I'm going to put in to lead it in that direction. But I'm not dependent. This is not a job for me. No. I'm not dependent on it, on the income. In fact, the majority of the income will go back to the community. So it's not a situation where I'm doing this as I'm not a career politician. No. But I do believe that I've got the skills and the business acumen to actually make a difference to Dunedin, and that's my sole motivation. Look, I will gain a great deal of satisfaction from being able to look back, when I'm sitting in my rocking chair in the retirement home somewhere, but being able to look back and say I made a difference to the outcome for Dunedin. That's all I want. That's what I want to achieve. That's it, and that will mean a great deal to me. And there's some selfish motivation in that, and that will be something that I would want to be able to say that I did. But it's certainly not. There's no other motivation than just seeing a better future for Dunedin. And I'm not interested in being the mayor of Dunedin. I'm interested in being a really good mayor of Dunedin, and that people would put me into that box with perhaps some of the people we could name from the past that were really good mayors of Dunedin. That's what I'm interested in being. And I'm interested in building that team around me and actually leading Dunedin to a different place, a place different to where it's otherwise going.
So you've formed a team around you already, Future Dunedin. Why did you do that? Why wouldn't you just go really hard, I'm going to be the mayor and I've got the capability to get the best out of teams anyway, I'm pretty proven. Why would you form Future Dunedin? Which, by the way, thank you very much for talking to me about Future Dunedin.
I think that grew out of the Retain Aurora campaign, where there were a large number of, I suppose, pretty capable people from Dunedin that signed up to the Retain Aurora campaign and put their name to the public campaign, and effectively swung the council's decision on that. And a lot of those people came to me afterwards and said, "Hey, you need to do a whole lot more for the city than what you are doing, and this is what we want to do." But I looked at that. No pressure, no. But one voice is not enough. One voice, a lone wolf voice, is not enough. You've got to actually shift and bring a team of people and shift the thinking. And I looked around the council table, and make no mistake, there are some really good councillors around the current council table. But there are some people around that table that shouldn't be there. They've been there too long, they've got old, they've got cynical, they've got lazy. They will spend a lot of time telling me that I'm wasting my time because the things are the way they are and you can never change them. And if I believed that for a minute, I wouldn't be here now. Like, I believe it can change, and I believe it wants to change, and I believe the community want it to change. But there are people around that table that shouldn't be there. What scared the life out of me in 2022, when I looked at it and thought, how do these people, yes, there's some good people over here, but how did these people get voted in? But then I looked at who missed out. And I thought, man alive, it's not like they got in, ahead of some really good people that missed out. And I thought, this is the problem here. The problem here is we haven't got enough good quality people putting themselves forward for public service. And that's a real issue. It's an issue in the Western world. You don't have to look far around governments, councils, the quality of people being prepared to put themselves forward for elected positions. And there'd be a number of reasons for that. One is I think we've become very selfish. I think we've become, if there's nothing in this for me, I'm not doing it. I think we've become hard, to the abuse, the online abuse, and the fact that people can sit there in their darkened rooms and say terrible things and think the politicians are just fair game for that. And that's doing everybody a disservice when you attack things in that manner. But that's going on. That's a reality of it, and we have to be cognizant of that. But all of these things have combined to put people off. And when I started speaking to people, fortunately you said yes, but when I started talking to people who would be fantastic counsellors and want things to be different, have got an awful lot to gain, they said, I'm not joining the circus. If you think I'm joining the circus, think again. I'm not signing up for that. And that made me really sad, but it also made me more and more determined to get a group of good people. And look, what I'm seeing here in Dunedin for 2025, and this is not just future Dunedin people, so there's some really good people in the future Dunedin that will give people the alternative to voting for some of the tired old war horses that are there now. So in the alternative, we've now got some good candidates, but not just from future Dunedin, but from outside, people running independently. I've been absolutely thrilled every time when I see in the paper this person's coming forward as well. I believe we can get a much better council in 2025 than we got in 2022 if people take enough notice of what's going on around them and vote for some new faces, some new ideas, and just some new energy. We just need some new energy, not people who say, it's never going to change and you can never, we're giving up on this. Just inject some new energy. There are some great people within Future Dunedin to choose from, but there's also some great people coming from outside of that group that you should really be saying, am I better off with this or that?
Yeah.
And make those good choices in 2025.
I'm sure the community or the audience can see why I said yes. I'm just so proud to be a part of the Future Dunedin ticket with you, Andrew. I know you're going to be an amazing mayor. Is there anything that you haven't shared that you thought we might cover? Just acknowledging that it is getting closer to people's attention span.
I'd like to think I'd like to hope that people have see me for what I am. I know that I'll get put in a box. I'll have people that it's been one of the hardest things so far.
They'll chop you up and put you into all the different boxes.
Well, they pretend they know who you are.
Yeah.
And that's really disheartening, I guess, in that respect. I mean, I can cope with that. I've done 40 years in the car industry. There's not much I haven't had thrown at me. But it is disappointing when people, the thing that hurts the most is when people go online and say, this guy's in it, there's something in it for him. Yeah. There must be something in it for him or else he wouldn't be doing it. Okay, what's in it for me is the satisfaction of knowing that I made a difference for Dunedin and that we could be, this could be a whole lot better place. I know that we as a team can work with many or some of the existing councillors. I have no issue with that. I know that, my experience with human behaviour is that whether it's councillors, whether it's the community, if they see that we get some wins and if they see, hey, this might be a winning team here, then they'll get on board, they'll get behind it. And that goes for existing councillors who are and who deserve to be re-elected. I'm certain that we can work with them to generate a much better result from Dunedin. But what we really lack is leadership. You actually need, whether it's a sports team, whether it's a company, whether it's a household, whether it's a church or a scout group, you need that person that stands up and says, I can lead this and I can put this team together and I can lead this in the direction that it needs to go. And I think that's what's been lacking in recent times in Dunedin, and I would dearly love to be seen as the person that could bring that. And I certainly hope to get the support of the people to prove that I am the person that can deliver that for Dunedin.
I don't disagree. I wonder, how do people support you? What are the different ways that the community can support Andrew Sims to become mayor?
I think the most important thing is we need to get more engagement from across the community to actually get out and vote. Take an interest, decide who you think is going to present a better future for Dunedin, and get out and vote. And in particular, I'd speak to the 30 to 45-year-old family people. Now, you've got more to win or lose out of this than everybody else. We know that, the 55 to 75-year-old people, they all come out and vote. They're engaged, they read the paper, they come out and vote. Some of those people have got nothing to lose. They won't live with the consequences of their vote. But the people the families in that 30 to 45-year-old group, you're the people whose children, grandchildren will really benefit from a change in direction for Dunedin. As I said before, I want my kids to live in Dunedin because they want to live in Dunedin. Not so that they can look after me in my dotage, but so that they want to live here because it's a vibrant, exciting place and they can't imagine themselves living anywhere else. That's the Dunedin that I want. I would urge you people to come out and vote, those people to come out and vote. The other thing I'd say is if you are a politically engaged person, so you take notice of what's going on, you watch what's going on at council, encourage other people around you to come out and vote as well. Like, encourage people to come out and participate. I would rather you turn out and vote
for anybody else
yeah, than not vote.
Yeah.
And on a day-to-day basis, what happens at council and the decisions that are made by council actually have a much bigger bearing on your day-to-day life than central government does. So don't view this as being somewhere down the track. It's not. It's the services that you receive every day. It's the quality of your playground. It's the fact that you can go to symphony orchestra or whatever you want to do. But it's those things that are determined by the success of the council. So I urge people to take notice of what's going on and to turn out, pick somebody that you think represents what you want Dunedin to be, and turn out and vote. Don't just ignore it. Don't just get it's just a matter of filling the forms out and putting them back in the mail or putting them in one of the orange boxes around Dunedin. We can't do another 3 years of stagnation.
No.
And there's a real possibility of that in 2025. We haven't got another 3 years to wait to actually get this thing back on the track. So please turn out and vote. Please take some notice about, who's going to provide a different direction and get out and support us.
Yeah. www.futuredunedin.nz. Sign up to the newsletters, follow the Facebook page, connect with the individual candidates. Their contact details are all on the website. Have a coffee, come to one of the public meetings, engage with us in one of the many ways that we're going to roll out, ways in which we're going to communicate with the community.
Sure, and I'm really happy to talk to anybody at any time. The best is by email, so andrew@sims.co.nz will come through to me. Happy to answer any questions, happy to come and talk to groups, whatever we need to do. I mean, I'd like to think that, we've taken some flack for the amount of publicity that we've put out there already. But unless we tell our story, people aren't going to know what we offer. So,
100%.
We've got a group of 9 people. We're putting a campaign together which will communicate our vision and ideas to the community. But I understand also that people want to talk about individual issues or just, either way. Really happy to receive criticism. Okay, really happy to have people say, hey, we're talking about, have you considered this? Here's a better idea than that. Email's best, so it's andrew@sims.co.nz, but also futuredunedin.nz on the website. Sign up for the updates and hopefully get interested in what's going on in 2025 because it will make a very big difference.
And bring on October the 15th, which is the final results day. I mean, we get a preliminary result on the 11th, but bring it on.
I think it's going to be close.
Yeah.
I think it's a time where, I hope that there's a good, clean contest, and we can all have respect for each other. And at the end of the day, I'm just sincerely hoping that on that day, we've got a way more competent and constructive council than what we've got at the moment, and that's what I'm hoping for. And that will be made up of new people from Future Dunedin, but also from outside of that, and I welcome that.
I know you've heard me say it many times, but kia kaha, kia maya, kia mana wanui. Absolutely wish you all the best, or all of us all the best, but you in particular. And I think the city would be blessed to have you as mayor. Thank you for joining me, Andrew.
Thank you, Bex, and thanks very much for saying that and for being a part of what we're doing here. I very much appreciate it.